Hey, this is Big Kev, and we are at the National Big Apple Convention in New York City. At my table, Big Kev's Geek Stuff, Michael Uslan.
Hey, Kev, how are you?
I'm good. Michael Uslan, of course, the producer of every Batman movie you've ever seen that did not star Adam West.
And we also buy comic books together.
That's right, we do shop at the same store. Mike, you have a bunch of things coming up, so let's talk first about what I gotta consider is your baby, the Spirit.
Yeah, oh man, it's been 13 and a half years in the making since I first sat down with Will Eisner and we talked about making the Spirit into a live-action movie. It's been one of those life quests that you go on, like I did with trying to bring a dark and serious version of Batman to the silver screen, and that first movie took us 10 years from the time we first acquired the rights, because I was turned down by everyone in Hollywood who told me it was the worst idea they ever heard. You can't make a dark, serious comic book superhero into a movie. It's impossible. It's never been done. And that I was absolutely crazy, which became my red badge of courage for many, many years. So this is a momentous occasion for me. I'm involved with some of the most wonderful, creative people in the world on this project, starting with the amazing Frank Miller, the writer-director, who has not only the creative vision for it, but the commitment, the understanding of Will Eisner, of the work of Will Eisner, of the Spirit, that is just the most wonderful thing in the world, to the point where he and Will have a book that's about the two of them that's out there, which is fascinating. My producing partners on this have been absolutely extraordinary. I give so much credit in the world to Deborah Del Pret. When I first came into Deborah to pitch her on doing the Spirit, I said, Deb, I've got the greatest creative work in the history of the comic book industry. And she looked at me, she says, Michael, don't tell me you've got the rights to the Spirit. I go, you know the Spirit? She goes, I'm a comic book collector. I'm a Legion of Superheroes completist.
Kismet.
It was unbelievable. My co-producer, F.J. DeSanto, and I were sitting there. I looked up, I said, Mama, I'm home. And with Gigi Pritzker, her producing partner, Ben Melniker, who's been with me throughout the decades on Batman, F.J. DeSanto co-producing, Steve Mayer, Linda McDonough. It is one amazingly committed family that maybe ought to be committed, who stuck to this vision and just have been dying to bring Will Eisner's The Spirit to the screen. And through the sensibilities of Frank Miller, it's been absolutely phenomenal. It pushes the envelope creatively. It's daringly innovative. It's out-of-the-box thinking. It's the spirit of Will Eisner through the sensibilities of Frank Miller that mesh beautifully. It's colorful. The villains are over the top. The women are sexy as hell. It's all those Eisner elements. I just couldn't be more excited about what's coming on Christmas Day.
So one might conclude that you are pleased.
Yeah, I would say I'm happy.
Your enthusiasm is infectious. It really is.
You know, I love this stuff. I was lecturing recently. I've been lecturing at a lot of colleges and universities.
I was at one of those.
Aha. Well, one of them, and you might have seen this, somebody got up in the Q&A and they said, well, can you explain exactly what it is your job is? I said, yeah. I said, every morning I get to wake up and go to a sandbox and play with my favorite toys. That's what I do.
That's awesome. Can you talk a little bit about The Dark Knight's coming back in January? We want to make sure we get as many people as we can there so we can beat Titanic.
Well, I think it's great. One of the great ways to see Dark Knight, of course, like any great comic book film, is on the big screen. You don't want to lose the impact of the big screen, especially when something is so geared for IMAX. And if you've never seen it yet on IMAX, make use of the opportunity. It's an amazing film-going experience, a different kind of film-going experience. It's all just very, very exciting. And there, you know, it's rare that I ever use the term genius, but all the credit in the world goes to this genius, Christopher Nolan, who so totally gets it, and I think is our preeminent filmmaker today.
Now, we've talked about The Dark Knight, which is coming back for a little bit, so that's kind of behind us. We're on the precipice of The Spirit being released, and we're gonna have all that excitement to happen. And I know, Mike, that you don't ever stop working. So what can we look forward to after The Spirit? What's the next project?
I'm always in search of special material. It's got to be special. It's got to be something about the character, something about the story that is standout, that's unique. So the next few projects I'm going to be working on, or am working on, include first with Josh Donen and Sam Raimi. You know Sam Raimi? Have you heard that name?
I have heard of him. He's his brother's a filmmaker.
That's the guy. Yeah, he did something with Spider-Man, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
Well, we are tackling The Shadow over at Sony Pictures, and I'm extremely excited about that. The Shadow was the first comic book script I ever wrote for DC Comics. I knew Walter Gibson, who was the main creative force behind The Shadow. I had a chance to work with Walter Gibson, so I feel a personal, direct connection to the material.
So this then it's a reboot of The Shadow, much like The Dark Knight was a reboot of the Batman film.
This is, in my mind's eye, the way The Shadow must be done. And we'll leave it at that for the moment.
I gotcha.
I'm going to be doing Shazam with Pete Siegel and Michael Ewing, which I'm very, very excited about. When I first was ushered into the world of comic book collecting and fandom, and I was one of the early members of comic book fandom starting when I was in 7th grade, the pro in the business who I first met and was like the godfather for me into this was Otto Binder. Otto was the writer in the 1940s and 50s, the major writer behind Captain Marvel, Mary Marvel, and the whole Marvel family. He then later went on to DC, where he created Supergirl and Brainiac and the Legion of Superheroes. And Otto, when I was a kid, put me in touch with C.C. Beck. And I had an ongoing correspondence for years with C.C. Beck. And he put me in touch with the editors, Wendell Crowley and Will Lieberson, and so many other people from the Fawcett story. So now part of my responsibility is Captain Marvel. And I take that very seriously as well. And I couldn't be more excited. And we're working very, very, very hard to make a great film here, too. And then coming up, bubbling underneath.
Nothing ever stops with Michael Uslan.
Coming up next behind that will be Doc Savage. And I'm very, very
wow. Very awesome. Thanks so much for spending time with us.
Thanks, Kev. It's a pleasure.